Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Neil McFarlane. I'm a healthcare specialist solutions architect with Amazon Web Services Canada. With me today is the CIO of the Canadian Institute for Health Information, Ron Huxter.
Hi, Neil.
Hi, Ron. Today, we're going to be discussing CIHI's journey to the cloud with a focus on one of the more difficult aspects, which is people. Ron, could we start off with an introduction? Do you mind telling us a brief history, a brief synopsis of what is CIHI, what is its mission, and why did you choose to move to the cloud?
Okay, no problem. So CIHI is a pan-Canadian organization. It's a not-for-profit organization. And its mission is to collect as much healthcare information as we can across Canada from all the various jurisdictions and territories and places, and then do some analytics on it to try and come up with data that indicates how the healthcare system is performing. So analytics which show the performance of the policies and the delivery arms of the various jurisdictions and how they compare to one another. So we have the Canadian-wide kind of results, and then we have comparative analytics for the healthcare performance across the various jurisdictions. Augmented with that is a series of research pieces and analytics, advanced analytics, that deal with topics and themes to help the various partners and jurisdictions create policy. So we do a lot of work, a lot of research into things like mental health, opioid addictions. Obviously, the topical one today is COVID, pandemic type stuff. So there's basically a ton of research that is provided to our stakeholders and to our partners to help them try to figure out where to pivot their policies and invest in the healthcare system in Canada. And aside from that, we also share our data with various research organizations, usually based in universities, and try and promote the growth of the healthcare analytics function across Canada. So, as you can tell, we have a lot of data. We collect a lot of data, and primary amongst that is collecting it from our partners in the most secure fashion possible, respecting the privacy as much as possible. So CIHI deals with a lot of personal health information, and we have really ironclad stakeholder data sharing agreements that we respect, and we go to any length possible to try and make that be as comfortable and secure as possible. So we are an ISO 27001 certified organization from our security and privacy perspectives. So you can see we collect a lot of data. We've been collecting it for about 25 years now. And we've been doing it in the traditional way. We have 2 data centers. We collect data according to information models, and we store it in relational type databases and flat files and stuff like that. The real reason we needed to kind of change things up and move to the next level into the cloud was to be able to manage how much data we can collect, how fast we can collect it. Once we collect it, how we actually free the data up from getting into advanced computing, machine learning, AI type of approaches and stuff like that. How to enhance the security of the processes we have around data sharing and data publication. So we needed to do that without investing in massive improvements or size increases to our data center. So we've gone into the cloud. We can now burst and get abilities to collect various amounts of data, publish various amounts of data, and to actually start leveraging some of the new technologies and the information and data management sphere. So trying to modernize the whole organization and put the IT infrastructure, to put the data infrastructure kind of in the rear view seat of preventing changes and evolutions in how we do our advanced analytics and and start utilizing some of the new cloud technologies.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ron. One of the issues that we've seen across Canada, especially in the healthcare space, has been a shortage of cloud skills. What was your approach to begin addressing this gap within CIHI?
Yeah, so it was fascinating. The approach was to develop a strategy about how or if or when and why we'd move to the cloud. So first of all was to get everybody on the same page, to have an actual strategic direction inside the organization. So we actually commissioned an independent third-party review and consultation of how we might exploit cloud technologies. So we ended up with a bifurcated process. We ended up with dealing with all of our office automation and all that kind of stuff as software as a service through the cloud. And all of our applications and data, the main core business of CIHI, was moving it into an Amazon Web Service environment. Now, the second choice then was, how do we do that? Right? Do we go for a type of approach where we hire SWAT teams and hordes of consultants to come in and do it for us as quick as possible, and then have our staff follow up, do knowledge transfer, follow up, and do the operations and move forward? Or do we take an approach where we go a little bit slower and we start investing in our staff from day one and have our staff do the actual migration and transformation into the cloud? So we picked the second option for a couple of reasons. First of all, you're right, there is not a plethora of cloud knowledge and expertise out there, particularly in the healthcare sector. So I don't even know if we could have bought what we needed, but it wasn't on the table anyways. So we decided to invest in our own folks. And that meant moving everybody out of a on-prem data center organization, moving everybody out of a 1970s relational database technology type of approach into a modern cloud platform. That meant we were going to spend a little bit longer doing the migration, and that meant we were going to spend a little bit more money training folks and allowing them to grow and develop this new way of operating. Another reason for it speaks back to the security piece that we had. Like I said, we are ISO 27001 certified. We did not want to hand over the keys to our kingdom, i.e., our privacy and security program as it relates to the protection of our PHI, or personal health information, and our stakeholders. We wanted to make sure that all of the ongoing processes and programs and policies that we had inside were going to be translated into the cloud platform properly. So that's why we developed our own folks. There's been different ways to manage that process. It has had some challenges at times. People were getting a little frustrated, sometimes maybe even feeling a little job threatened. But once they realized that they had the permission to make mistakes, once they realized that they had the permission to learn and to do things the best way they could and to move forward from there to continuous improvement, it really turned a corner, and we really started to move on to the next phase after migrating into the cloud, is then optimizing inside the cloud. And that's where we kind of find ourselves right now. So it's really important to make sure that staff understood the opportunity that was in front of them and take advantage of it. And almost all of them did. We had a very low turnover during the entire migration into the cloud. And we have folks now that are just doing things that they'd never dreamed of 2 years ago. And as I said, their education, their training doesn't stop once we moved into the cloud, because moving into the cloud is relatively straightforward. Getting optimization and getting the best out of the cloud technologies is the next step. So AWS is helping us a lot with our training programs. They're helping us a lot with seeing things differently, introducing us to clients that have done things in an IT or computational or data storage way, so we can learn from them and move forward on it. So it's been quite the adventure.
Well, that's phenomenal. Based on what you said, right, moving away from legacy technologies into new capabilities, but the really key point I got there was people had felt they had freedom. They could explore without concern for repercussion. They were given autonomy to actually do things on their end, be measured more on, achieve these results rather than follow these scripted procedures. That sounds like a cultural change. That's difficult. How did you start going about that?
So the important part there is you can train people through courseware, through CDs, through conventions, through all kinds of processes until they get their hands on it and actually start doing it. it's really hard for them to internalize it and then move on to the next level of understanding. So we kind of set the project up in a way that we would play with a few sandboxes first, and then we would move into low risk environments. So we did not do a giant big bang migration. We migrated our development environments first, then our testing environments, and then our integration and pre-prod environments and UAT environments, and then our production environments. So when we did the first environment around the development, we made some mistakes. we made enough mistakes that we could learn, so that when we did the testing environment, we didn't make that many mistakes. And then when we moved from the testing environment into the other ones, it was getting better and better. By the time we got into production, which would be about 6 or 7 months later, it was literally a flick of the switch, because we had allowed ourselves the room to make mistakes and the time to make mistakes when it wasn't a high risk mistake. I mean, if we had gone forward and tried to do all environments at once without having the experience of learning from the other ones, then we would have had a big problem. Right? So you have to stage the migrations, you have to stage the transformation and the whole change, so that people are allowed to make mistakes, because it's not really a mistake. It's like what Edison used to say, was like, it's just proving another way of not doing it so you can move on to the next one. So it does give a different flavor to the culture, which then leads us into looking at adopting more iterative or DevOps type of environments, where you go fast, you go short. If you make a mistake, you back up and you move forward to the next iteration. So it's kind of getting into that whole new way of operating IT as a business.
Well, that's fantastic. You mentioned around a lot of legacy technologies moving away from. How do you see people's roles changing now? If you're moving from day-to-day operations of maintaining specific artifacts to letting us do some of the undifferentiated lifting for you, how do you see those that freeing up or being able to shape that new capabilities?
Yeah, so that happens in almost all aspects of the operation. So let me give you an example of something that's really quite finite and demonstrates what I'm talking about. So the whole concept of backups, data backups, restoration points, data center disaster recovery processes, and all that kind of stuff. So we had an on-prem data center in Toronto. We had an on-prem data center in Ottawa. Our disaster recovery and backups meant that we would test each site failing over to the other site. We would test all the data backups and all that kind of stuff. It would literally take a month or 2 months to actually plan, conduct, and then learn from the disaster recovery processes. In the environment we have right now, that's literally a button, right? We streamlined the backup so that we're actually keeping exactly what we need when we need, and we can fail over inside the AWS environment very, very quickly. So it has completely changed the job function, the job role around all of our analysts and our DBs and all that stuff that are dealing with the disaster recovery and backup, into looking at how you manage the data in real time, how you access it in different tiers of storage, how you move from one region to another. So the concepts are different, the practice is different, but the outcome is the same. So
Okay.
that allowed people to redefine how they worked and what tools they used. And then that parlays into everything. That parlays into data acquisition techniques, our data coding, our data analytics, how we store data, how we publish stuff, right? So it transforms the whole ability for us to move forward.
Well, that's fantastic. Culture change is not easy by any stretch of the imagination. If we were to look at technology versus people, people is always the more difficult aspect. Do you have any advice you'd want to give to other healthcare leaders around some of the lessons that CIHI has learned, or some of the pitfalls to avoid, or best practices that you think should be more widely adopted?
Well, I don't know if I'd preach to other people to tell them what to do. I can tell them what we've done, so that they might want to look at it for consideration. So it is the ability for folks to learn and to make mistakes, to pick up the pieces and put it together and move forward without any retribution, right? So That's easy to say, but it's really hard to practice once you have a finite project with a finite budget, and you have a timeline you want to meet and all that other kind of stuff. But it can be managed. So I'll give you a classic AWS example of what happened. During our planning of moving from our on-prem data center into the the AWS environment, we had to follow a guardrail and a commitment to have our total cost of operations of our data center operations the same in the cloud as it was on-prem, right? Hopefully a little bit less, but that was the actual bare minimum. We had to have it at least or less. So we developed a whole TCO strategy. So the TCO strategy basically said, here's all the components of everything we do on-prem. Here's how they cost. Here is where we're going to move into the cloud, and this is how much it's going to cost. And then we could target how we were going to migrate and what we were going to migrate and what we were going to do. So somewhere along the way, we firmed up the TCO. Things looked really good. And then somebody realized that AWS operates in American dollars, and we're Canadian. So there was a 30% difference in the TCO overnight. so that kind of would usually have led to some kind of punishment. But basically what we did was gather ourselves together and figured out how we could shave 30% off of our TCO by invoking some of the cloud technology, some of the processes we could get out of the AWS marketplace, and actually bring the cost down to meet the new TCO. Now, the fact that we went through that process and everybody survived it gives people license to understand that, you can make a mistake. As long as you fix it, it doesn't matter. And that's the culture.
Well, that's remarkable. Safety has often been regarded as one of the largest barriers to innovation within organizations. People being afraid to take risks, afraid to do things because of the fear of retaliation. Being able to give people some more leeway, well, that's remarkable. That's almost, I'd say that's even somewhat unique within the sector.
Well, Neil, it's interesting because folks in IT are usually fairly analytical and fairly bright. Once you're put in a situation where your whole technology stack, your whole environment is going to change from an on-prem to an on-cloud, you have a decision to make at an individual basis, right? You say you either are going to fight it or you're going to make it happen. If you make it happen in an organization where it hasn't happened yet, you define things, you create things. So we can also appeal to the individuals and their creativity to want to build something new and be accountable and responsible for what they're doing to do in the future. That, nested with the fact that you're not afraid to make a mistake, is very powerful. It just allows the freedom for people to move and to change. Now, we've been operating in the cloud full time in all environments with all data and everything since June of last year. Did we do it perfectly? Absolutely not, right? There are a lot of things we would have done differently had we known what we know now. So, do we get crazy and upset about it? No. We go into version 2. And then we'll go into version 3, and we'll continually optimize and continually improve and continually change. So it's an unending story in that regard, because the interesting thing about the cloud platform and cloud technologies is they're at the forefront of change. They change every day. They change every week, right? On-prem data centers and relational databases and information management practices have largely been the same since the mid-70s. So there was not a whole lot of creativity and development in that technology base. Now we're in an environment, in the cloud environment, where you've got to keep your head above water and you got to keep moving. So that is the real appeal that the technologists we have are finding addictive.
Well, that's amazing. Well, Ron, thank you very much. I appreciate those words of wisdom, and I look forward to continuing this journey with you.
Well, Neil, it's been a pleasure, and look forward to more.
All right. Thank you very much, Ron, and everybody else who's joined us. Thank you, and have a great day.
You've heard it before. We're connected all the time. It's a digital world. At CrowdStrike, we keep it safe. So wherever you go, go with confidence. Welcome to Anywhere. CrowdStrike. We stop breaches.